welcome everyone to this week's episode of Creating the Vision. I am with just a fascinating, sweet, amazing soul, Beth Norcross, and we met through the Thought Leader program and writing our TEDx talks and the application process and everything. You have recently given your TEDx talk.
Yes, it was very exciting. All that hard work paid off.
Yes, that's awesome. Well, I hope to join you and our other compadre soon, who is in our little cohort.
I know you will.
Yes.
I know you will.
But super exciting for you guys. And I know that one thing that throughout the process of just kind of getting to know each other and getting to know what our talks were about, I know your talk aligns with a lot of what you do in your career, your professional world. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to sit down and have this conversation is because when we create the vision for our life, typically we find some place or some space, some space, that where we feel aligned, we feel centered. That whenever things get chaotic, whenever things get hectic, those things can bring us back to that center and that space or that place, whether it is through visualization or it's a physical space and place that we go to. So I want you to share just a little bit about what it is that you do, because you talk so much, and this is you're professional. You speak, you write, you're an author now as well. Oh my goodness, soon to be writing a book on spirituality, but that combination with ecology as well, and how we can kind of get to that divine mystery, that place where we feel our center. And I think anytime we're talking about creating the vision for our life, that's incredibly necessary. So I want to put it over to you, Beth Norcross. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you, and take it away.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I've really been looking forward to it. I apologize in advance. There's a little cold going around here in D.C., so we'll see if we can get through this. I direct and started the Center for Spirituality in Nature. And what we do is we give people opportunities and resources that bring them back to the natural world, to reacquaint them with the natural world as a place of spiritual engagement and deepening, whatever that might mean to them. We have people from a variety of different Christian traditions, Muslims, Buddhists, and so forth. Every major religious tradition has some kind of an earth-centered foundation. So in terms of creating vision and having space for vision, of course, the natural world, and when I say natural world, I think of us as a part of it, although we so live outside of it now. So I think people know what I am talking about when I say nature. But that does open up a space for us to be, of course, it's quiet. We can push away some or allow to drift away a lot of the noise, the internal and external noise that we have on a day-to-day basis. It also brings us back to our first home. It's not been too long since we were living closer and more aware of our dependence on the natural world, on our day-to-day existence, getting our food and our water directly from Earth. And so now as we live apart from it, there's what some scientists call an eco-anxiety that happens as we live apart. So as we come back into nature, there's a coming home, not only to our first home, but the first way that we were. That travels with us in our DNA and in our traditions. And so we can go back into the natural world and really understand, perhaps for the first time, who we really are and how we fit in to the world around us. And so in creating vision, or it seems to me, at least my experience with the natural world, is that we are doing less creating of vision and more listening for the vision that is already there for us and for the earth, which is one of harmony and wholeness. And the natural world has so much wisdom. And the TED Talk and the TEDx Talk and the upcoming book are both talking about the spiritual wisdom of trees. We evolved out of the earth. We share a lot of DNA common to many of the critters and creatures. 50% of our DNA is similar to that of a tree.
That's so fascinating.
These elders have been around for hundreds of millions of years, and they have a few things that they can teach us as we move forward, as our sense of where we are meant to be becomes more apparent to us.
Yes. Ah, that's so neat. How did you, I guess, happen into this or fall into this? What's your link to studying this and really building your life and career around this?
Well, you and I have talked many times that I had been around long enough to have had a lot of different careers, and I had no idea that they would somehow relate to each other here at this stage of my life. So I have a master's degree in forestry, and then spent a lot of time in the environmental community and got a little burnt out, so want to do something a little less political, so I moved into church work. Anybody who has been in the church knows that's a fool's errand. So I got some more theological training. And it was interesting that for a long time, my love of nature, which I've always had through camping and hiking and kayaking and skiing, was over here. And my sense of spirituality was in a different place. And when I went to theological school for my master's and doctorate of ministry, it just was so apparent to me that these are interwoven, that nature and spirituality through my tradition, which is Christianity, but in every tradition, as I said a moment ago, are interwoven. The Bible itself is full of references to understanding spirit through the natural world. And so coming out of that, I started toying around with different ways that I could serve, and looked around and found that even in the faith community, but also in the environmental community, there was such an emphasis on action, which, goodness knows, we all need more action on behalf of the earth. Yeah. But it felt to me like something was missing, that there was a grounding, a foundational piece of our action with the earth that was missing. So I started the Center for Spirituality and Nature in hopes of bringing people back to this foundational, grounded way of understanding what I might call God and someone else might call mystery or divine or spirit, that would then inform the way that we act in the world. Because so often, even our good deeds are activated by our egos.
Yes.
And that's gotten into us a bit of a mess with the planet, as well as many other aspects of things that we worry about right now. So we go back into the natural world. We recenter ourselves, re-relate, re-engage with the natural world. And with that enlivening force that's so apparent there, regardless of the name in which you call it, and it can guide us. It can give us a path forward for our lives and for our actions. And also, and I'd love to talk to you more about this, give us a sense of inspiration for these challenging times, to inspire us with its resilience and adaptivity. So there's so much out there waiting for us, particularly now.
Well, and let's talk about that, because one of the things you said earlier that really fascinates me and always keeps me, you said that nature, and I'm paraphrasing, but you said, like we it's where we can find our place in the world, or when we're wondering or thinking about our place in the world. And I think right now, in these challenging times, in so much of what's going on globally, I mean, geopolitically, climate change, global warming, just the earth, environmentally, there's so many. I sometimes will lie awake at night thinking there are still people in this world who can't get clean running water.
Yes.
And that absolutely overwhelms me. Yes. So then I start to ponder and question, my place in the world. Like, how did I end up in this spot, in this life and in this way? And then how do I then use that for good? How do I then take this life that I've been given and say, okay, I'm going to go forward and I'm going to do this. So that's my kind of process of how I then create the vision. It's how I then find that purpose, lean back into that why of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and it's how I become recentered. But in these challenging times, I would love for you to talk to that, because where do we begin? Where do we go?
Well,
and maybe that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's so much, of course, to cover in that. And for those of us who have the opportunity, and I just want to be clear before I answer that I know that to go out for a walk in the woods is a privilege. And it is not one that many, many people in many, many areas of the world, and we could name them, goodness knows right now we could name them, don't have that opportunity.
Right.
And my hope is that the natural world still is providing some comfort to those who are in war-torn areas, who are looking for the next meal and the next glass of water. So I don't want to minimize that.
Right.
For those of us who do have this opportunity, there are many, many examples in the natural world. I'll start with trees, because I've been thinking a lot about trees recently, of ways that they can inspire us and guide us and comfort us. So, for example, I was walking the other day and I saw a tree that had grown sideways and then down and then back up again as it was looking for the light. What a tree can do is adapt. There was something happened in that tree's life to cause it to have to only grow sideways. And we all know there have been times in our lives where we can't grow very much. Sometimes it's all we can do is to stay the course and stay alive.
Yes.
And then there are times that we have to dip down, times that are dark and difficult.
Yes.
And then other times when the light is more apparent, however you might define that, to move upward toward the light. So one of the things that I personally would take from that tree is ask the questions, what do we as a community have to do to adapt to these times? What's my role in adapting? The other thing that I learned from that tree is that the trees don't fight the things that they need to do to move toward the light, to get nourishment. They don't fight it. They don't struggle with it. They don't ponder it. They don't think about it over and over again. Goodness sakes, why am I in this?
Right.
They just grow in whatever way they can. Again, always searching for the light. Another thing that I might take from that tree is to consider resilience and how in the midst of the challenges that it faced, how resilient it was, inspiring me to be resilient as well during whatever times that I or my community or my family might be going through. So those are the kinds of things: guidance, comfort, resilience, and hope. If we think about if we'd run across that tree earlier in life, how it would be pointed down, and we would think, gosh, it's probably going to die soon. Whoosh, up it goes. So there are many, many lessons that then we can take from the natural world. And I might add also, I've taken a number of groups out, grief groups, people who are really hurting, the most horrible things having happened to them, and taking it into nature and grieving with nature and lamenting with nature.
Yes.
So important for these times in particular. So those are just a couple of examples.
I love that. That's such a powerful analogy, because immediately I started going there with you as you're walking through those steps of, or not even the steps, but just the thought process that we would go through in those same kinds of situations where, right, sometimes we just need to be and to listen. And we actually do more. It reminded me of something that I was always told growing up was, not to speed through things, because sometimes you have to slow down and really take a look at what's going on around you, so that then you can speed back up to that level, or that, mile per hour that you're trying to achieve in order to stay, consistent or reach your goal. But that if you're always traveling at that speed, well, then you're not seeing anything around you. And it was just, something that I think always kind of stuck with me when I was growing up, from like a coaching and mentoring standpoint. I used to have a teacher who would tell me that not to rush through. Don't rush through your music. Sing through it, sing with it, be in it, instead of just trying to get to the end. Be in that moment. And that's something I think in our world, as crazy as it is, and crazy from a lot of different aspects, crazy busy, crazy hectic, overwhelming, we are all balancing so much. I was doing a workshop a few weeks ago, and we were talking about how, overwhelm, stress, fatigue, insomnia, they're all at record, highs. We are, depression is increasing in people. And post-pandemic, I would have thought we would have come through this. I thought the pandemic would have taught us a lot of things about how we should live our life. I slowed down a ton during the pandemic. I really took time to reflect. I took time to write and to think and to get recentered. But one thing, and we've talked about this, and I think kind of to head in that direction, is, what if you're not acquainted with this process, or not even the process, but what if you're someone who has just never found, and I don't want to say never found solace, because I think that we have to be open to that, and I think we have to put ourselves in those situations. But a lot of the space in which I reside in are people who are very goal-oriented. So when I get someone who comes to me and says, I don't even know where to begin, I love that, because that's my favorite. They're my favorite.
Let me help you.
Exactly, yes. Let me show you all of the things. Let me enlighten you. Let me teach you so many things, just pour into you in that way. So when it comes to our spirituality and these walks in nature and building it around our world, but our nature, our natural world, what is your recommendation to people who are like, I have no clue, I don't even know where to begin?
Well, I think that, as I said before, there are those who need to be reacquainted with the natural world, and then those who need to be acquainted with it. And, I have family members for whom nature is not their first place that might have been because their mom took them out maybe one too many times out into the cold and stuck them in a tent. But I think there are a number of ways to approach this, and I think as a way of getting started, go for a walk. Whether you live in an urban area or a suburban area or a wilderness. There was a professor friend of mine who used to do sidewalk safaris in the streets of Milwaukee.
Oh, cool.
There's something growing. And even watching a plant come out of a sidewalk is something, isn't it? That plant is saying, you know what, concrete, you're not getting the best of me.
That is cool. That is fascinating. I've always wondered that.
So the thing that I would suggest we do, take a deep breath, of course. Even if you have 5 minutes, I think everybody has 5 minutes. 5 minutes less on Facebook.
Yes.
That's the challenge. Yeah. And then pick a sense. Not use all your senses at the same time, because we're toggling. As we do in so many ways, we're toggling back and forth. We're doing sight, hearing stuff. Pick a sense, whatever it might be, and just pay attention to what's around you for 5 minutes with that sense. We do some programs at the center where we pilgrimage to our own backyards. There's an awful lot going on in our yards and in our local parks if we choose to look. And I'll just do a little pitch for this. But on our national parks, we go to our national parks because they're big and grand and wonderful. And they're awesome, and we study and we go to nature talks and so forth. What if we took that same curiosity, that same openness to our own backyards? Mm-hmm. So 5 minutes with one sense. Close your eyes and just listen. Close your ears. Yeah. What do you see?
Oh, I love this.
Smell. Mm-hmm. Touch. And taste, if you're sure of what you're tasting. I always want to be clear about that. Another idea in your own backyard, again, draw a circle, an imaginary circle, 1 yard wide, 3 feet wide. Sit down, 5 minutes. What's going on? I do this all the time, Maria, with people. They're like, oh, there's nothing. Oh, what's that? There's really, oh my goodness. What's that ant doing? Goodness gracious, that ant is carrying something 5 times its weight. There's so much delight,
right,
and wonder and awe.
Yeah.
And every study that you'll read suggests that time in nature can be very healing. Psychologists and psychiatrists are putting it on their RX pads, their prescription pads. Mm-hmm. Go out into nature. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, again, it's as close as just stepping out your door. Mm-hmm. I'll share one story. I was doing a talk at a church once, and a woman came up to me afterwards and said, I would love to spend time in nature. I've got 3 kids. I've got a busy job. Tell me when this sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yes. A busy job and a long commute. I am going from pre-dawn to post-sunset. And she said, the only time I see any outdoors is when I look out my window when I'm driving and I can see the sky. I can see the sky. And so she began to use her commuting time, especially when she was stuck without movement, to look at clouds, to look at the sky. It's so convenient. It's so accessible if we just open ourselves a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I do the same on planes. I love to sit by the window. That's why I always request it, because I am a look out the window, see everything that's going on, just the clouds going through the clouds, flying above the clouds. To me, it's incredibly soothing and fascinating. It's also a little bit of a control thing because I can see what's down below, or I can at least kind of see out. But I've always been in awe of being in the sky and seeing things from that perspective. I think it offers me that a little perspective. And I also find that when I fly, it's that quiet time where, even though you can hop on Wi-Fi, which I do eventually, but I'll just spend the first 10, 15 minutes of the flight without any interruption, just sitting there, looking out the window, thinking. Yeah. I don't have my phone. I don't have, it's on airplane mode. It's and it allows me time to just reflect and to think. I think about my dad who passed away. I think about my grandmother who passed away. I think about, family members that I never got the chance to meet. In so many ways, it reconnects me with, because I'm up in, the sky, which I think is where we all look, right? We all look to that from, I grew up in the Catholic Church, very, so rooted in faith and Christianity. And so for me, it's a comfort. It's that comfort. And of course, I'm inside of a 10 can, but at the same time, it does offer a little bit of that peace. But then I think down on earth, the beach is that place for me.
Yeah. I think each of us has, that place. And you mentioned, some important losses that you've had. And nature, again, as I mentioned earlier, it can be a place that can be very comforting. And yes, there are first steps that people can take. Of course, we have some publications and lots of classes that people, if people want to go a little farther with this, and some spiritual practices on our website. But one of the things that, especially if people have had a recent loss, that I like to do is to go out into the forest and find a large fallen log. So this tree is, for all intents and purposes, dead. And I'll put that in quotes because when you look and you ask the person to say, what's going on with this tree? And he or she will find moss on that tree, lichen on that tree, perhaps a sapling on that tree. And we'll open the bark a little bit and find that there are thousands of little insects that are feeding on that tree. That tree, in forester language, is called a nurse log.
Okay.
And I love that concept. Yeah. And it's very comforting to people who have had loss because they know, as I'm sure you did with your dad, grandparents, that they are not gone, that they continue to enliven you and your children. And this tree is such a visible reminder of that. And ultimately that tree will decay. And sometimes if there's a tree that grows over that dead tree, the tree will disappear, but this new tree will have a void. And they call those ghost trees. Look around in the forest, you'll see them.
Okay.
These that seem to be floating on air. It's because something that's no longer visible held them up.
Oh, wow.
But are still present in the form that the tree has taken. And so, what is death actually? Because as the tree dissolves, it becomes part of the soil, which of course will feed new life and will be the source of new trees. So is there any finality, really, in the natural world for us in death even? So I wanted to mention that because it's been a source of great comfort to people, I think, who have lost and understand so viscerally that these people are not visible to us anymore, but still extraordinarily present.
Yes. Well, and I think in spirituality, in general, that's what we're called, as Christians, is to believe that just because we can't see it doesn't mean that we don't feel it. We don't have that being around us, that we can still feel through our prayer, through our reflection, our meditation, I think I often make those requests that I know I can't see you, but, make me feel that you're here, make me, and I think being grounded in that alongside being very focused on what it is that I'm working to achieve helps me kind of create some semblance of balance because I can very much get way focused on just the end goal and getting there and achieving that goal, that I sometimes miss the forest for the trees. So not to throw that in there, but and so when we've talked about this, but for me the beach is that place where then I bring it all back together to say, okay, you're so focused that you're kind of missing everything that's going on around you. It's time for you to get back to that place.
I think time in nature both orients you and disorients you. And by that, it orients you to your true place. But it also is very disorienting because it challenges the world in which we normally live. It challenges the goals. It challenges the
definitely
the human-centric or the orientation that we have. We can see more clearly when we are reflective in the natural world, our place. And we are only a part of this web. And in my personal theology, this force that enlivens all challenges us to see the beauty and the value in the non-human, and challenges us to regain our place, important place, but our place in a great interconnected web. and challenges us not to get so big for our britches
Mm-hmm.
and orients us less about what it is that we want in terms of your work, what we want and what we desire, but what the community wants and desires. And I don't mean that in a sacrificial kind of way, giving ourselves to it. It's just understanding how our place relates to your place, relates to the trees, the salamander, the ant, how we are woven, how our places are woven together. And ultimately, I think much of our anxiety, not all of it, of course, much of our anxiety comes, and we know this from children who have been indulged, because we have been allowed to get too big for our britches.
Mm-hmm.
And as we reorient ourselves and get smaller,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't mean that in a way that demeans us,
Right.
but as we find
Not
our
a
place,
dimming of your light, but
no,
yep.
as we find our
Just
place
awakening.
again, then we can put down a number of those anxieties and say, look, this is just me being a part of all of this.
Yes.
And I'm enough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm enough in the midst of all this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say one more thing. You got me on a roll now.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about the natural world is that there's no element. There's no element that tries to be anything more than it is.
Mm-hmm.
And red oak that tries to be a white oak. There's no sycamore that tries to be a cherry. They just are.
Yeah.
And they're satisfied with that, as opposed to humans who are grasping and striving and trying to be all the accumulated stuff that people have put on us and society puts on us.
Yep.
But the red oak just gets to be a red oak. And so when we're in the natural world, it frees us to say, what am I meant to be?
Mm-hmm.
And what am I meant not to be?
Yes.
What can I put down?
Mm-hmm.
In trees have a wonderful thing that they do called self-pruning. And as they grow, they drop a lot of their branches that are lower down because they no longer feed them and they no longer provide energy and they no longer give them life. So they drop them.
Wow.
What are the places and the people and the expectations
Yep.
that we need to self-prune if we're going to find our way
Mm-hmm.
to what we were meant to be?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I see this so much in the space that I work in,
I
where
bet.
we're really trying to accomplish a goal for the goal's sake, and it's really trying to help people understand, but why? And sometimes we continue peeling back, those layers to say, but why? But why? But why? But I have to do that for myself too, because, and that's where I get realigned and recentered. When I'm staring out, and I love walking as well. I mean, I walk a lot. It's become my mode of working out these days. It's just taking really long walks, which I enjoy. But to your point, I do start to I calm down. I start to realize that I don't have to accomplish everything all at once. Just take it day by day, take those baby steps. But I think something that, what you were talking about and referring to, so many analogies and parallels to our everyday life, because how often have we held on to baggage and resentments and past mistakes. I mean, I know I'm very good at that. Times when I failed or been rejected, we hold on to that. And it's almost like we need to be more like those trees. They're not serving us any purpose. They're not serving us anything. We have to let that go. And at the same time, the other thing you said that really struck me was you said, the red oak just tries to be the red oak. And I think so often in our culture and our society, and especially with young women, I mean, I have an almost 16-year-old daughter, and I see that it just permeates that culture of you have to be like this person, or we have to be emulating or trying to achieve a particular look or persona or whatever that may be, when really we just have to be
the red oak.
The red oak.
The best darn red oak.
Yes.
We can be.
We can be. Yes.
And accept when there are challenges.
Yes.
And accept when it's time to adapt.
Yeah.
Accept when it's time to be resilient. Yeah.
Yes. And I think if we kept those analogies at the forefront of our minds sometimes, it would help us realize that we are enough, and that just by being ourselves, we're fulfilling our purpose. We're doing what we're supposed to be.
We're doing and being enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that message.
Yeah.
So I do want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about the TEDx and that experience for you, because similarly to how I feel nature helps us regain our focus on creating that vision, I know that this was something that you had worked towards. You had created your own vision to see this through and to get to the TEDx stage. So if you would talk a little bit about that and getting there, and also maybe when and where we can find your talk.
Well, I appreciate that. It was a real honor to be on the TEDx stage, and I'll give a shout out to our organizer, Tanya Diamond, who put on such a good presentation for us and trained us and gave it and put us through our talk practices and organized this in such a splendid way. So a shout out to TEDx Woodinville is the name of the TEDx. And I spoke about the spiritual wisdom of trees. And I think for me, it was, it's so hard. I'd like to say that it was all about trying to get this message out. And I think it was largely so. Of course, there was some ego involved. I wanted to do this. But I think at this stage of life, it really was more of I think the message of what's out there in nature for us is so important that I really wanted to get that out. We hope that it'll be out in January or February, but there are no guarantees. It's, as you know, these are recorded and then they go through the big TED and they put them up on their YouTube channel when they can get to them. So, but it was a wonderful experience. The presenters, the 19 other presenters, were wonderful comrades, and we enjoyed being with each other. And then this particular one, they're usually, as you know, 12 to 18 minutes, but these were 9-minute short takes. And so it was really difficult for me. As you can tell, I'd like to talk around things to get it, to really hone the message down to 9 minutes. But boy, I'm so excited to hear how things go when it comes out and get it around to as many people as possible. I would encourage anyone who wants to do this to take the plunge. There are many, many TEDx's all over the world. So, and I'm waiting for yours.
I know. I'm working.
We're right behind you, Maria. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And then also authoring a book. Right?
Yes. We're really proud and pleased that Broadleaf Books has decided to publish my colleague and my book. Leah Rampey is my colleague. It will be on the spiritual wisdom of trees. It'll be coming out in spring of 2025, so I'm desperately writing away. Yeah. And I will admit that I'm spending a lot of time with the trees and reading about the trees. And such an honor and a privilege to be doing this work with my friend Leah Rampey, who's a wonderful spiritual leader in her own right, has a new book coming out, Earth and Soul, I think the name of it is. So, and just having to write and articulate this has clarified my thinking. You've written and so it really helps you go deep and have to be very precise with your language and your message. So I appreciate that shout out. The folks at Broadleaf have really been wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read it. Yeah. You've definitely opened me up to a different way of looking at nature.
Oh, good.
Because I definitely take it for granted.
Yeah.
I definitely take it for granted. And I try to be as environmentally conscious and friendly as I can. I'm very well aware of the environmental implications that overconsumption is doing to our environment and our world. And that then has a direct impact on our ability to enjoy nature and our ability to, to go out and experience those things. And you see it with, I live in South Florida with hurricanes.
Yeah.
You see it with wildfires in the West.
It's real.
Yes, it's very real. And so in those moments, it really causes me to pause and take a step back and to see what is it that I'm particularly doing or not doing to be a part of this in a positive way. And
well, I think that's a really important, I'm awfully glad that we got to this as we were closing, because this spiritual journey into nature is far more than just a navel gazing. Right. And it's far more, it's about more than who we are. So I've seen this time and time again. Our center's been open almost 10 years now. And as people come back into the natural world, they see it sometimes for the first time or the first time in a long while. And to see it then is to fall back in love with it. And as we do, and again, I've seen this, we started making adjustments to our lives and our lifestyles because we want to honor this relationship. And we can see for the first time, for example, in our neighborhood, the houses are getting bigger and bigger. And this prohibits the surrounding areas from absorbing floodwaters. And so we can see trees that are now hanging on the sides of streams because the stream beds have been eroded. That's because of our larger and larger houses, which I have my own sense of guilt around. So as we fall back in love with trees or with the beach or with the mountains or the desert or whatever it is, we see our place and we want to do better. And that's a very different place to start than we should do better. We want to do better. Because if I'm in relationship with you or a relationship with my children or grandchildren, I don't want to harm them. I don't want to do anything. I want to make their lives or be as full and healthy as possible. The same happens in the natural world. I've seen it in my life, electric cars and solar panels and, native plants, and I've seen it time and again with our participants. It's dangerous out there. You might have to adjust your lifestyle. And feel right about it.
Yes. The thing for me is, and I think it's always been a big one, I guess, but ever since I was a kid, pollution has always really frustrated me. It's it's one of those things. Littering is one of my biggest pet peeves. Put it in the trash, but more so than that, recycle it. Make sure that it's going into a recycle bin. And when we go to the beach, I think it's probably one of the things that can start to, I think you mentioned earlier, disorient me from that experience when I look down and I see a bottle or I see a wrapper or I see something and I think, oh my gosh, what are you doing to this place? This is supposed to be for us to enjoy, but we have to respect that it's here and we need to leave it. My mother always taught me, leave something better than you found it. So I think when I go into nature, when we're in the mountains or we're at the beach, for me it is, what can I do to leave this place better than I found it? And I think that's, and I think that's a lot of my goal setting space as well, is I want to, I know my why and I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that message is because I want it to be better for the next generation. Yeah. I want them, to grow up feeling very, very centered with their goals, very centered with what it is they want to accomplish in their life, but more so than that, centered with why they're doing it, because they're fulfilling who they were meant to be and who they were born to be. So there's a lot of parallels between that space and nature. Yeah. And it's fascinating because I don't think I ever made this connection
well, good.
until you and I started talking.
And I'm sorry we don't have more time to talk this afternoon.
No, I know. But this has been fantastic. So one last question before I let people know where they can find you and where you can share that. I always ask all my guests, There's a part of my process is a do the dang goal. Like, what is the thing that you're like, I need to get that done? And maybe you've already accomplished it. I don't know. But is there another one? Because I would say the TEDx might be one of those. Maybe the book is one of your do the dang goals. Is there another do the dang goal that you are working towards accomplishing?
Well, we've had a few of those this year, so it's...
I know, you've crushed them. Yes.
We have certainly wanted to do the TEDx, and the book, of course. I have to say, in all honesty, I'm going to take a breath and see what is it? Do the dang goal.
Do the dang goal. Yep.
Do the dang goal.
Yes.
And see what emerges.
Okay.
From the writing, from the times we're already starting to get some talks, offers, and some retreat leading and things like that. So I think that generally what I'd like to do is do a great deal of public speaking. I think this is an important message. So the form that takes, we'll see.
I agree. Yes, I love your message. I do think you...
So if that's do the dang goal is to get more speaking engagements.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so where can people find you?
Well, our website is spiritualityinnature.org, and my contact information is there.
Okay.
Easy to find. Mm-hmm. And I'm just such an honor and such a pleasure to be with you today.
Yes.
And it's interesting how your work and my work have kind of merged and integrated, and how many overlaps there are. So I wish you the best of luck as well. You're doing important work in the world, and I want people to find you as well.
Oh, well, likewise. I think this is so, yes, I'm going to eventually, we're going to get the whole family up, and we're going to have you take us on a walk in nature, because that is going to become one of my do the dang goals, is to make sure that happens. Good. But thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you for this discussion. I think it's definitely necessary, and I think especially for anyone who maybe is feeling lost or feeling like we're the holidays are coming. We're upon a new year. There's a lot of emotions this time of year. There's a lot of heaviness, a lot of feels, a lot of thoughts, memories creep up. But it's just the holidays can be a very happy time. They can also be a very sad time for a lot of people. And so I think in paying respect to that, my hope is that when they listen to this episode with you and I, that it might charge them into action to say, maybe I need to just step outside my front door and take a deep breath.
Yeah. And I might add just very quickly, the holiday season is fraught, as we know, and those are human traditions. Those are human creations. Mm-hmm. And I have yet to see any evidence that anything out in the natural world is celebrating anything, that they have their families, and they do have families around them all the time, that they're aware of and appreciate in their own ways.
Oh, I love that.
And so this is all human stuff. Yeah. And it's messy and wonderful and terrible and all of that.
Right.
But the natural world, you can step outside of that or into that and find peace and solace and a real grounding that is far beyond anything that we humans could have constructed.
I think that is a perfect way to close out. Oh my gosh, you just put the bow on top. That was perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. Beth Norcross, thank you so much for being my guest this week.
It's been my pleasure.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And everyone go visit the spiritualityinnature.org. And as soon as your TEDx talk drops and the book, I will be the first to push that out there and support you.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.